This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by Lady Shelby of House Plier.
Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra, the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we're into chapter 43, Eddard XI of A Game of Thrones. And in Fire and Blood, we are discussing Prince into King, the Ascension of Jaehaerys I. So,
yeah. Wow, Sir Ezra, a new year is upon us.
It is, so it's New Year's Eve, and it's exciting. We, I don't know, man, it's been a crazy 2018,
Yeah,
so
it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to, finishing strong tonight, having a few, drinks and some celebration. You got any fun
Are you doing
plans?
anything for New Year's? No, I might be going to a New Year's Eve party a little bit. I don't know. I've been sick, as you can hear in my voice.
Yeah.
This past week, I had like a fever, a chill, the whole gambit there.
The spring and summer sickness, all of it.
Geez,
and winter
all at
and
once.
fall,
Yeah. So, forgive my pardon my voice here. I feel like I should call myself Sir Ill in Pain, but
we might have to turn you into one.
yeah.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
But no, I'm gonna make some pork and sauerkraut because that's like what you do on. That's like what you do on New Year's. So I was like, okay, then I'm gonna do that.
Dude, do you remember when we were living together and I used to make sauerkraut like all the time?
Yeah, and then you'd be like, man, I'm gonna eat this for weeks, and then you'd eat like one thing of it, and it'd sit in the fridge for like 3 weeks,
and it'd mold. Just mold in the fridge. Oh gosh, I actually do like the taste of it. It was like a pork tenderloin and some sauerkraut, man, in the slow cooker.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna do that.
That's cool. My plans are just I'm gonna head over to my sister's. We got some friends coming over there, and we're gonna hang out and bring in the new year. Pretty chill, actually. Research has kept me up all hours of the night the last couple of days, just researching some, Game of Thrones theories. That Lofton Shield episode fired me up, man.
Good.
Like, it was so good to do that, and I felt refreshed, having more time to kind of get back into it and really, dig deep. So we got a couple things we want to announce. We're in small council now, so there
Go ahead and announce them.
Yeah, so we're here. First of all, I want to mention, if you guys have a chance, encourage someone, bring a friend, enter the Facebook group because that's a lot of good discussion happening there. We say it every week because it's true. All right, so if you're not there, shame on you. All right. We actually need to announce. We'll go ahead and make the announcements now for the first Raven's Nest. Actually, we got some upcoming stuff. So next week on the 6th of January, we are going to record the Black Council Mystery Night. Sir Matt and I are going to kind of finish that up and get that out to everyone on Patreon. And then on the 13th of January, which is a Sunday, we're switching. It could be Saturday, it could be Sunday, but for right now, we're going to start off with a Sunday because it just works better for us right now. We are going to have our first Raven's Nest. Going to be exciting. So
yeah, we're gonna have to hammer out a time, but we'll figure that out next week and announce it next week.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll post probably on the 6th, just like the actual time that we're going to start. And again, it's one of those things like we're going to have to do some editing with that. We're going to have some pauses or some internet. Hopefully your internet connection is good,
right?
So you can participate. And if it's not, no big deal. We also have a backup plan for people just to kind of call into the show and things like that. So we will communicate those details with our top tier patrons, and be cool to hear their voices and chat with them just in general. And I kind of feel like it's going to be more of just an open-ended, chat. We're going to be getting to kind of hear from people, around the nation, across the world, wherever, just people who have been listening and supporting us for a long time. And so that'll be exciting. And then we'll kind of continue those. We'll pick the dates. let you guys kind of know ahead of time when they're coming, so you can plan ahead. And I think we're going to release a couple different topics because we have ravens that have gone to our inbox, which are kind of neat. I think it's neat we want to give people a chance to be kind of familiar with the topic, but then we want to also just read the ravens, on the show too. So we'll figure all that out. But I'm excited to announce it, anyways. So
yeah, exactly. So we have that coming. The next Black Council. T-shirts will be sent out soon to those patron members who are in that tier, in those tiers. So we have those being sent out shortly.
Yeah, and is it okay? I'm going to go ahead and I'm dropping this because it's something I'm probably going to do, and I know Sir Matt and I will end up. We do this anyways. We have musings.
Drop it.
I'm doing it. Okay, it's happening.
Drop it.
So I thought something that happens often, even before we started this episode, we have conversations, and we talk about various things that may not be like long, but it's our thoughts, and it's sort of almost a behind the scenes type of thing, but it's just us thinking about theories. You kind of get to see the thought process, I guess, because as we've said before, there's a lot to this, and it takes a lot to kind of rifle through all of the different text and hunt down the information. So we're going to do basically something called like musings with Sir Ezra, musings with Sir Matt, and they're like 5 to 10 minute periods of reflection or thought where we share our thoughts just about characters. It could just be pick a character, kind of share our thoughts on that character. Do we like them? What do we like about them? What are some cool, interesting characteristics or features about them? Maybe characters, at the end of Dance of Dragons, who's left over, who is going to survive going forward. But they're just real quick things that we thought we could drop on Patreon. And we'll make a playlist there so you guys can see those. You can kind of, if you're not interested in that, you can just rifle right past and go to the Black Council stuff or the full-on Green Dream episodes. And by the way, the Lost in Shield, that was our, kind of our teaser. We put that out there for everybody. But going forward, we're going to try to have more of those Green Dreams on Patreon, and then once every 3 to 4 months we'll drop another big one on the main feed. So
yeah, so
exciting stuff though.
Sounds great. Hey, a lot of super cool stuff. So
all right, what any news there, Sir Matt? Anything coming up? Anything cool?
Nothing big. I did read on Gur's Not a Blog. So there is the 20th edition Game of Thrones book. It's like a leather-bound, illustrated book. You've probably seen it in Barnes & Noble and stuff like that. It's like a bigger, thicker version. And Gur announced that they were going to release a version of that of Clash of Kings. So it's still the same book. It's just it's like a nicer leather-bound, bigger book, and it also has some illustrations in it. So we're going to get that because now Clash of Kings is 20 years old in 2019. So
wow, that's awesome. Okay, that's cool. That is pretty neat. So I'm sure we'll be getting more, stuff. Hopefully, when do you think we're going to get the trailer? When do you think that's going to be? Super Bowl? Is that going to be?
Oh yeah.
You think so?
Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure we're going to get a Game of Thrones Super Bowl trailer.
Okay. Yeah, that's exciting. So. All right. Well,
HBO has started a rewatch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've started. I don't know what their schedule is. I haven't looked at it, but yeah, they've started. Hey, come rewatch Game of Thrones to get ready. So. Oh,
nice. Okay. Cool beans. Also one more quick little teaser. We have possibly. I'm going to reach out to some folks. Just some new surprises coming up in the new year. Things we might be doing a little differently with our newsletter and such. If anyone's interested in helping with the newsletter, please hit me up, especially those who are in our top tier, our top patrons. Hit us up. Get some fun ideas that I want to run by some folks. So I'll leave you with that. All right. Over to the Maester study?
Yeah.
Think we're ready? Okay.
Hey, I'm ready.
All right. This is, good, because I inadvertently read
I'm not.
the other 2 chapters. I did go ahead and read this before we were starting, though. The Prince into King, the Ascension of Jaehaerys I. So, some new stuff for us.
All right. Yeah. Jaehaerys I Targaryen ascended the Iron Throne in 48 AC at the age of 14 and would rule the 7 kingdoms for the next 50 years, until his death of natural causes in 103 AC. In the later years of his reign and during the reign of his successor, he was called the Old King for obvious reasons. But Jaehaerys was a young and vigorous man for far longer than he was an aged and feeble one. And more thoughtful scholars speak of him reverently as the conciliator. Archmaester Umbert, writing a century later, famously declared that Aegon the Dragon and his sisters conquered the 7 kingdoms, 6 of them at least, but it was Jaehaerys the conciliator who truly made them one.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's neat about Jaehaerys is just the way, I mean, he rules the longest. We call him the Old King for a reason. And he has this wisdom to him. It talks about his demeanor being really calm, on the surface. He's got this even kind of demeanor, but yet he still has the fire of the dragon when he needs to have it.
Absolutely.
So pretty
well,
cool.
and the thing we had said about Fire and Blood that's going to be the character who we're going to get the most of out of Fire and Blood that we don't already know from A World of Ice and Fire and kind of the main series is Jaehaerys.
Yeah.
Because in his World of Ice and Fire chapter is pretty short considering how long he rules. It seems like it was just like, yeah, everything is great.
Right.
And, for a big period of time. That's pretty much the World of Ice and Fire chapter. So, we're about to get a lot of him and a lot of actual history. You, Sir Ezra, and I saw the wiki page on the Song of Ice and Fire wiki has been already updated with some of the Fire and Blood stuff as that's coming out. So now it's like wow, his page before was like 3 paragraphs. Now it's like really thick. So
it's awesome. They've got all that Fire and Blood stuff updated in there. So if you want to get a condensed version, definitely go check it out. It's pretty neat. One thing I wanted to mention too, as we start talking about Jaehaerys, it's like, so his father is King Aenys, right? And he had to live through Maegor's rule, which was pretty terrible. And his his older brother and sister, which Aenys made the mistake, right, mistake, air quote, of marrying his those siblings. So Rhaena and Aegon were married in 41 AC, and that is what I was reading up more on, like the Poor Fellows and the Faith Militant, and how that enraged them, and how they really got upset by that union. And so I thought it was kind of ironic, we'll get to it later, in who Jaehaerys actually ends up marrying, which is it's not in this chapter, but we'll get to it later. I just thought it was kind of interesting. But yeah, you have that whole division there. That's sort of what allows Maegor the Cruel to kind of step in later and put down some of that Faith Militant stuff. They go to their guerrilla war tactics and things, and then he's finally, the throne kills him, which we're going to get into in our Game of Thrones chapter today. So, but yeah, just remember his older brother and sister, or brother ends up his brother ends up dying, and then Rhaena actually is the one who's kind of passed around a little bit. So, but anyways, yeah. So he ends up because really one of the things, Sir Matt, is like he has an older sister who could have been queen, right?
Yeah.
But she, I think, just with all the stuff that happened between her and Maegor, and trying to save her children, King's Landing just Rhaena Targaryen is just done, really, with living in King's Landing and just being a part of that royalty. So she goes to Fair Isle, which and stays there. Because I was wondering, I asked you beforehand.
Right here. I'll read this. I'll read this line. And there's also the nation of, I don't know, there's still some rumblings of the idea of like, well, women just shouldn't rule, right?
Yeah.
Like that's starting to come about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right here. Some suggested that Rhaena herself might have the strongest claim to the crown. As the firstborn child of King Aenys and Queen Alyssa, there were even some who whispered that it was Queen Rhaena who had somehow contrived to free the realm from Maegor the Cruel, though by what means she might have arranged his death after fleeing King's Landing on her dragon Dreamfire has never been successfully established. Her sex told against her, however. This is not Dorne, Lord Rogar Baratheon said when the notion was put to him, and Rhaena is not Nymeria. Moreover, the twice-widowed queen has come to loathe King's Landing in the court and wished only return to Fair Isle, where she had found a measure of peace before her uncle had made her one of his black brides.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I can totally see, too, why if there's that notion out there, and she's had all this history and things, she's done. She's done with this.
Right.
It's going to be a fight anyways for her to take the crown over her brother. And you've got Rhaegar Baratheon there, who ends up kind of being with Jaehaerys' mother, right? I think they're kind of together, aren't they? Alyssa Valerian. So, but anyways, so yeah, there's that, and I just thought it was, kind of one of the interesting things is she is old enough to actually wear the crown though, and rule, whereas Jaehaerys is not. He has like a year and a half regency that he has to endure before he's 16. So what is he, 14 or something when he kind of first comes back? So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Let me read on here. Let me go. I'm going to skip ahead here just a little bit.
Right ahead.
Let's see. It was a fortnight later, so they kind of talk a little bit about just the things that happened right after, Maegor's funeral, some of his knights, kind of what happened to them. Let's see. Oh, in the chaos that had followed the discovery of Maegor's body, Lord Rosby drank a cup of hemlock to join his king in death. Buckwell and Rawlingford took ship for Pentos, whilst most of the others fled to their own castles and strongholds. Only Darklyn and Staunton had the courage to remain with Lord Towers to yield up the Red Keep to Prince Jaehaerys and his sisters, Rhaena and Alysanne, descended upon the castle with their dragon. So when they show up, these are the only guys who kind of stayed to turn things over. And let's see. Prince Jaehaerys, this is what he says, you come late to the feast. He says this in a mild tone, and these same blades helped slay my brother Aegon beneath the god's eye. At his command, the three were immediately put in chains, though some of the prince's party called for them to be executed on the spot. So he ends up kind of putting them away, and we kind of, we don't execute them right away. So he's already kind of showing, what's the word there? I mean, he's not rash. I guess he's not just jumping right to kill this person, that person. It's like there's a fairness to him that we need to kind of weigh this out, even though they'd killed his brother, been a part of that. So then this is the cool part here. A fortnight later, Lord Rhaegar Baratheon and Queen Alysanne arrived at King's Landing with their host, and hundreds more were seized and imprisoned. Be they knights, squires, stewards, septons, or serving men, the charge against them was the same. They were accused of having aided and abetted Maegor Targaryen in the uprising against the Iron Throne, and in all the crimes, cruelties, and misrule that followed. Because that was a part of it too. When they looked at some of his Kingsguard, these were the guys who held one of his black brides down and cut her tongue out. You know what I mean? So. They participated, even though it was at the command of their king, which they were sworn to kind of obey. It's still a cruelty.
I mean, right here, he's like, five of Maegor's 7 yet survived. 2 of those, Sir Oliver Bracken, Sir Raymond Mallory, had played a part in the late king's fall by turning their cloaks and going over to Jaehaerys, but the boy king observed rightly rightly that in doing so they had broken their vows to defend the king's life with their own. I will have no oath breakers at my court, he proclaimed.
Yeah.
And then all 5 were sentenced to death, as you said. So,
yeah. Oh, wait. What was cool is that. So, yeah, he sentenced them to death. I think it was his mother or somebody who steps in and says that gives them a chance to go to the wall, which is what I thought was.
But at the urging of Princess Alysanne, it was agreed they might be spared. They might be spared if they would exchange their white cloaks for blacks by joining the Night's Watch. 4 of the 5 accepted this clemency and departed for the wall. Along with Sir Oliver and Sir Raymond, the turncoats, went Sir John Tollet and Sir Simon Kane.
Well, and isn't that kind of cool to think that some of the Kingsguard, go north and they're at the wall. I don't know. I mean, it's like they had to be, the best of the best, right, to be in the Kingsguard, and so. Even though they did say that Maegor kind of surrounded himself with what do they say, old men and spick littles, but still, they're the Kingsguard. So I thought it was kind of cool that they could kind of continue on and there could be a story there. One of the cool bits here was, and you get into, I think it's the next chapter where they really talk about the formation of Jaehaerys' Kingsguard, but the 5th Kingsguard was Sir Harold Langward, and he demanded a trial by
combat.
Combat, yeah, and they actually grant that, and so wait, let's see. So yeah, he granted his wish. Oh, to face. Granted his wish and he offered himself to face Sir Harold in single combat, right? So Jaehaerys wanted to fight one of the King's Guard. I mean, he was willing to, all right, let's do it. But his mother kind of overrules him, and instead this young knight, Sir Giles, Sir Giles, Morgan, Sir Giles Morgan. The man chosen was the nephew to Daemon the Devout, the great captain of the warriors' sons, who had led them in their trial of 7 against Maegor. Eager to prove his house's loyalty to the new king, Sir Giles made short work of the elderly Sir Harold and was named Lord Commander of Jaehaerys Kingsguard soon after. So you get like a tease here just of like the first guy who's kind of comes into the fold, and we meet, someone who, did an awesome thing. He ends up beating one of the other Kingsguard, and then he's a younger guy. And he ends up being a part of the Kingsguard and his Lord Commander. So I thought that was kind of a neat little transition of power, bit there. So, all right, let's see.
What do you want to hit up next?
Well, let me just keep going here. So they talk about how this reconciliation is not. It didn't bring peace overnight. So that was one of the lines here. It must not be thought that the reconciliation of the lords brought peace to Westeros overnight. So it just kind of talks about the bitterness that was left by Maegor's rule. It was a lot to kind of overcome. So I think that's one.
There's a lot to clean up. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's one of the achievements of Jaehaerys is that like he's at this young age, with the help of his mother, is able to kind of right the ship, and work in such a way that he heals the kingdom. One of the characters that pops up next is Sir Joffrey Doggett, who was the Red Dog of the Hills. I think he's a part of the. Gosh, wasn't he a part of the Poor Fellows? Yeah. And they were kind of in that guerrilla warfare tactic against Maegor. And so let me read a little bit here about him, just because I think he actually comes to the coronation, I think. Let me see. Whilst he had collected the heads of hundreds of stars and swords, hundreds more remained at large. Tens of thousands of lesser lords, landed knights, and small folks sheltered them, fed them, and gave them aid and comforted wherever they could. So let me go back one sentence just so you understand here. King Maegor's efforts to exterminate the Poor Fellows and the warriors' sons had set many pious men and women against him and against House Targaryen. So that's the obstacle that he has to kind of overcome. And so they're being hid by various folk, right? And taking shelter. So let's see. Ragged Silas, Dennis the Lame, commanded roving bands of poor fellows who came and went like wraiths vanishing into the greenwood whenever threatened. North of the Golden Tooth, the Red Dog of the Hills, Sir Joffrey Doggett, moved between the Westlands and Riverlands at will with the support and conveyance of Lady Lucinda, the pious wife of the Lord of Riverrun. Sir Joffrey, who had taken upon himself the mantle of Grand Captain of the Warriors' Sons, had announced his intentions to restore that once proud order to its former glory, and was became recruited
recruiting
knights to his banners. Is there a bit? I feel like there's a bit where he ends up kind of reconciling things a little bit, like that he was a part of it. I could be wrong about that, because the next character
I think it's later on.
Is it later on? Okay. So we'll come to it, because the next character that pops up is Septon Moon.
Moon, yeah.
Who's kind of a big deal.
Yet the greatest threat was in the south, where Septon Moon and his followers camped beneath the walls of Old Town, defended by Lord Oakheart and Lord Rowan and their knights. A massive hulk of a man, Moon had been blessed with a thunderous voice and an imposing physical presence. Though his poor fellows had proclaimed him the true High Septon, this Septon was no picture of piety. He boasted proudly that the seven-pointed star was the only book he ever read, and many questioned even that, for he had never been known to quote from that holy tome, and no man had ever seen him read nor write.
Yeah, and he's the one who's really kind of speaking out against the Targaryens, and kind of keeps this bitterness for like a long time, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah, and he's kind of I mean, he is kind of it's very questionable about his religion, right? You know, it says barefoot, bearded, and possessed of immense fervor. The poorest fellow could speak for hours, and often did, and what he spoke about was sin. I am a sinner, were the words with which Septon Moon began every sermon. And so he was. A creature of immense appetites, a glutton, a drunkard, renowned for his lechery. Moon lay each night with a different woman, impregnating so many of them that his acolytes began to say that his seed could make a barren woman fertile.
Yeah. So he's kind of, casting stones left and right. But not that he should be. But anyways, he is. And so if you skip down a couple paragraphs here, so it says the long conflict between King Maegor and the Faith had made it imperative that Jaehaerys be anointed king by the High Septon. And both his mother and Lord Rogar kind of agree with that as well. And so he ends up, one of the things I want to finish my thought here with Sir Joffrey, I forgot that I read this in the wiki, and that's why I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, is that he does survive that war with Maegor, and he actually does he journeys to Old Town with Lord and Lady Tully to meet the new young King Jaehaerys, who comes to Old Town, because we're about at that part where he's going to head to Old Town and get blessed by the High Septon. And Sir Joffrey was received courteously by the king and asked that the laws forbidding the Faith militant be undone. Jaehaerys refused, but asked Doggett instead to serve in his Kingsguard. When Sir Joffrey drew his sword, Grand Maester Bennifer, who was present, feared Sir Joffrey might intend to harm Jaehaerys, but instead he placed the sword at the king's feet with tears in his eyes and accepted the offer. So I thought that was kind of because this guy was a beloved kind of leader in the Riverlands, and someone who was kind of leading the warriors' sons and raging that war against Maegor, and
right.
And they come back, and it's like anybody who obeyed it, who helped Maegor was imprisoned. So these were folks who were fighting against him, So it kind of makes sense that he would offer that type of olive branch, to Sir Joffrey here,
Right.
So that was pretty cool.
Even going back to just the idea, right? I mean, do you view Maegor as kind of, in a way, a usurper? Do you view Maegor as as kind of a villain?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Aegon and Rhaena were ready to take their father's place, and that was, he knew that he was behind in the line of succession, and basically, that was when you remember when Aenys was kind of like when he banished him, and
right.
He asked for Blackfyre back, and you could see the defiance there, and that he's like, well, you're welcome to come take it from me. And then so his son Aegon and Rhaena are hunted down and like they actually fight. They fight against him, and it ends up that he's killed. People supported Maegor on Balerion, and a part of that was it's weird because the Faith at first was upset with Aenys. They're upset because he marries daughter to son, and then they're upset with Maegor because he's taking multiple wives and doing all sorts of evil, crazy things, and the Faith militant and the warrior's sons and poor fellows all rise up against him. And then Jaehaerys shows up and with, on his dragons, and after the king has been, killed by supposedly Rhaena Targaryen on the throne, on the Iron Throne, and they imprison all these people who were supporting him, and now they're kind of trying to bridge this gap between Old Town, and the Septons, the Faith. So it's just it's a crazy back and forth. But yeah, I do see him as a villain. What do you?
I don't know. Because
here we go.
It's weird because the Maegor is his second son, right? So typically, you would be in that idea that the line of succession is this, right? Your first son, firstborn, continues down their line. But I don't know. The Targaryens, it's kind of different because you have Aegon has two wives.
Sure. Absolutely.
He has two wives, and his sister is older, and it's not like it's outside of their realm of ideas for like a woman to rule or Right. So, and they all three kind of conquered together. I mean, I know it was with Aegon, so I don't
Right.
know. I can see the argument for Maegor.
Well, you
Um,
you could make the case that like, okay, after Rhaenys dies, and he has Aenys and he has Maegor. Um,
right.
maybe once Aegon
Maegor's
himself,
also isn't Maegor also Maegor is older um than Aegon. So, yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah, older than Aenys' son, yeah. But here's where I was going is that like after Rhaenys dies, and then after Aegon himself, the Conqueror, dies, who's left over from that trio? Visenya, and so
Yeah.
if you were setting up succession, maybe why is the Queen then not?
Yeah,
you
she
know,
should have a claim to the throne.
Right, you could have taken it that direction. So it was all based upon how they wanted to set up their um, this inheritance, or who kind of the succession,
Right.
and they just chose, to kind of go. I don't know if it was like, I don't know. I don't really remember if it was something that was set up in the Valyrian way, or if it was like something that the Seven Kingdoms kind of, it was a custom that they had, But yeah, it went to the first son. But I see what you're saying, because it is different, because he has the two wives. And he's had them from the beginning, and that was the older sister, and she is also left there. She's the reigning, ruler. I guess she could have been, and then she
Right.
could pass that down to her son. So yeah, I know. It's kind of, is he a villain? Is he not? Did he usurp the throne? So that is one
Right.
that's kind of questioned, because then it does get back into Aenys' line through Jaehaerys, but he did end up fighting Aegon for it,
Yeah.
and Rhaena, which is crazy. So ends up fighting his own, and he becomes a kinslayer. So, yeah, okay. So anyways, that was a good discussion, because I think it shows you how much that Jaehaerys had to kind of do to build the bridge back between the Targaryen family and the faith, and
Right.
and what they had to do there. So. Another cool character too that you guys should look up is Grand Maester Bennifer. He's actually pretty cool, and he's pretty loyal to the Targaryens, and he's a good Grand Maester, and pretty wise. And actually I think he ends up being one of the reasons too that Jaehaerys is successful. So at least in the beginning.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
okay, let's see. Yeah, I'd already kind of read the part about him showing up there so the 48th year after the conquest is basically in the Starry Sept. That's when Jaehaerys is crowned, correct? I think in the 48th year there, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he has that 2-year kind of regency under his mother, where he'll then, in 50 AC, that's when you really sort of see Jaehaerys take off, which we're gonna get to probably next week.
Next week. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see anything else though that was really. Did you have anything else from this chapter? We're kind of at the end there. Basically, he has the coronation.
Yeah, we're kind of at the end.
Yeah, and I think that's basically there's a description of the coronation, which is kind of cool, but it's nothing crazy. You get all the Targaryens there, and they're in Old Town, and so that's where the healing.
The biggest kind of takeaway from this chapter is that he reconciles the faith, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one of the cool things, I just want to read this because I've been on the Red Dog of the Hills. I was talking about him earlier, and okay, so he says here, the faith has no need of swords. This is when he's talking to the Red Dog. He declared, "They have my protection, the protection of the Iron Throne." He did, however, rescind the bounties that Maegor had promised for the heads of the warrior sons and the poor fellows. "I shall not wage war against my own people," he said, "but neither shall I tolerate treason and rebellion." And then the Red Dog says, "I rose against your uncle just as you did," which is why, that's where I was driving to that point that, like, these folk were actually doing the same thing that Jaehaerys was, trying to fight, against Maegor the Cruel. And he says, "You did, and you fought bravely. No man can deny that. The warrior sons are no more, and your vows to them are at an end. But your service need not be. I have a place for you." And with these words, the young knight shocked the court by offering Sir Joffrey a place at his side as a knight of the Kingsguard. It's so cool that it is like a hush fell then. Grand Maester Bennifer tells us, "And when the Red Dog drew his long sword, there were some who feared that he might be about to attack the king, but instead he went and he bent his knee, bowed his head, and laid his blade at Jaehaerys' feet. It is said that there were tears upon their cheeks. Then there's this like 9-day coronation kind of feast and things. It's just, it's pretty cool. It's a cool little end to that chapter, to see him do that, and to see that is the ultimate sort of, I think, symbol that he had healed things between him and the faith. So, yeah, we'll leave it
All
there
right.
probably. Wow, good discussion.
The reread.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. Last week we were in Tyrion 6. Tyrion and Bronn had made, well, not last week, the week before last. Tyrion and Bronn had made camp on the high road. Tyrion wanted to make a fire, but Bronn protested that it would bring out the Vale Mountain clans. Tyrion sees no point in trying to avoid the clans, and Bronn gives in. As Tyrion plans, the Stone Crows arrive, and Tyrion negotiates an agreement. This week we are in Eddard XI, really moving down this book. And the last time we were with Ned, he was dreaming about the showdown at the Tower of Joy. When he had awoken, he found King Robert angry about the abduction of Tyrion Lannister, demanding that Ned make peace with the Lannisters. Robert reinstates Ned as Hand of the King and declares that Ned must sit on the Iron Throne because he is going hunting. This week, at Eddard XI, as the Hand of the King, Ned hears a petition from some House Tully bannermen concerning raiding on their holdfast by Sir Gregor Clegane. He strips Clegane of all lands, titles, and his life, and sends a force under Lord Beric Dondarrion to dispense the king's justice. This is Sir Ezra's one of Sir Ezra's single favorite moments in the entire series, book, and show. And the show version is great too. So,
oh my gosh, man, let's go! It is literally, it's just so cool because it's this command that comes from Eddard, and I mean, I even wrote down all the different names of the guys who are sent out too. There's some cool connections at the end of this, but man, it's just I don't know, because you're also talking about the mountain. Sandor is actually standing right there. I think he's there, or did he go on the hunt? I feel like he was there because they motioned to him and talked about him. Basically the mountain kind of dwarfs even his brother. That's sort of one of the ways they kind of discover who this is. Let me you can start us off there, Matt, if you want, Sir Matt, if you want to read a little bit, and I'll pull up something here.
Sorry, 1 second here. Let me get back to it. I was further down. Through the high, narrow windows of the Red Keep's cavernous throne room, the light of the sunset spilled across the floor, laying dark red stripes along the walls where the heads of dragons had once hung. Now the stone was covered with hunting tapestries, vivid with greens and browns and blues, and yet it still seemed to Ned Stark that the only color in the hall was the red of blood. He sat upon the immense ancient seat of Aegon the Conqueror, an ironwork monstrosity of spikes and jagged edges and grotesquely twisted metal. It was, as Robert had warned him, a hellishly uncomfortable chair, and never more so than now, with his shattered leg throbbing more sharply every minute. The metal beneath him had grown harder by the hour, and the fanged steel behind him made it impossible to lean back. A king should never sit easy, Aegon the Conqueror had said when he commanded his armorers to forge a great seat from the sword laid down by his enemies. Damn Aegon for his arrogance, Ned thought sullenly, and damn Robert and his hunting as well.
So that they talk a little bit about that, the forging of this Iron Throne.
Right.
I mean, dude, at one point he has his hands on the armrest there, and it's like there are knives sharp enough to cut you jutting out.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. Actually, even if you leaned back, it said that they're right. So that's why you had to kind of sit forward and you had to sit erect. You couldn't slouch really when you're in that chair.
I'm surprised no king ever took care of that. Was that? I'm surprised no king has ever been like, let's fix this.
Right. Yeah. It's a good point. I don't know. It's
especially like Joffrey. I could see Joffrey being as I'm not going to sit in this dumb, uncomfortable chair.
Yeah, let's smooth this out a little bit, yeah.
Right.
So, anyways, and it's interesting because that ties us back to Maegor the Cruel, and it'll talk here in a little bit about the idea that, that seat could actually kill,
Yeah.
Could actually kill a king. and perhaps it did. So they start talking about these brigands, and it's Varys is there, Littlefinger's there, Grand Maester Pycelle. So some of the council are there. The only two who weren't there, I think it says, was Renly Baratheon and Sir Barristan Selmy. They are out on the hunt as well, and also Stannis Baratheon is away as we know.
Sure.
One thing that's neat. So a character that comes up in this is Sir Raymond Derry, and he's actually come up before when Arya is found and brought before King Robert and punished for attacking Joffrey. And I thought that was kind of a neat little connection, is that he's kind of sent to King's Landing as a part of this group with Sir Mark Piper and a couple others by Hoster Tully, really Edmure. Well, actually, it was Hoster Tully who kind of said, "Seek the king's justice and not go after these folks yourself." Edmure was ready to go hunt them down and just blood for blood, but Hoster wants them to go get some justice there. But so, anyways, the whole point here is that these brigands, they talk about these brigands who show up and are ravaging the Riverlands, and they start to kind of describe the things that happen, and they're just awful. But the reason I brought up Sir Raymond Derry is just because of his, remember how he wasn't, his allegiance during Robert's Rebellion was with the Targaryens, and he was he was kind of against Robert Baratheon, and so there was that was a little dicey, and then now he's coming back, supposedly he's coming to see Robert Baratheon, and ends up being Eddard Stark, but still just a cool little connection right here in the middle of this chapter.
Yeah.
So they show up here and they're talking about brigands, these guys who showed up and they're raping, pillaging. Did you think, by the way, that girl that was on her knees, who wouldn't get up? Do you think she was raped? I mean, is that?
Oh, probably.
I hate to say that, but I feel like it was totally, and I feel like Gur was actually intentionally not saying that, but really hinting at it, and it just. Gosh, man, it just kind of broke me a little bit. She can't even get up off of her knees, and she keeps looking, at these men around her, looking for some justice, and I think that really, he draws a lot of attention to her, because I think that is something that kind of struck everyone. She can't rise, she stays on her knees, because Eddard, he doesn't want them. He talks about the truth being, flowing more freely when folks are standing. And not kneeling.
And they talk about what they do. And I like where he's like, "Tell me what happened." And Joss says, "If it pleases His Grace," and he's like, "His Grace is hunting." He's like, "I am Lord Eddard Stark, the King's Hand.
Right.
Tell me who you are and what you know of these raiders." Right.
Right. Well, I thought it was cool, because that's the difference in the show is that Maester Pycelle says that, and I've always liked it better that Ned says it instead, right? I mean, doesn't Pycelle, I think, in the show says it, and it's sort of like a slight towards Eddard, but it's like he knows who he is. Anyways.
It says they burn us out, came riding in the dark up from the south and fired the fields and the houses alike, killing them as I tried to stop them. There were no raiders, though, my lord. They had no mind to steal our stock. They butchered my milk cow where she stood and left her for the flies and the cows. They rode down my apprentice boy, his apprentice, set a squat man with Smith's muscles and a bandage around his head, chased him back and forth across the fields on their horses, poking at him with their lances like it was a game, laughing, and the boy stumbling and screaming until the big one pierced him clean through.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, man. It gets me so fired up. This is part of what happens to these people. This is not what. At one point, Sansa shows up, and Eddard is upset because she shows up, because he's like, "This is not what they expected today. This is actually kind of."
Well, so the girl, like you said, right? She was probably raped. She says, "They killed my mother too, Your Grace," and they, and her voice trails off, right?
Yeah.
And so she starts to cry. Yeah. So I'm sure that's that's what.
Yeah.
happened.
When it says there was blood, on right. So I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty awful, and he just is I mean, Eddard is like, of all days, this is a pretty big thing to bring before the king. It's not your normal day in, day out situation. And what they try to do is, are these brigands or are they not brigands? Are they just robbers and what have you, or was this organized by someone? Is this, because they're making the case that it wasn't just brigands. These were Lannister men, is what they had came here. Hoster Tully, had sent Lord Darry and others, Mark Piper, to kind of explain that we believe they were Lannister men, and here's why.
Right.
And it comes down to like their armor. And Eddard, he questions them, like, did you see any device or sigil or anything that would indicate, Lannister men? Could you describe that to me? And they start to describe the armor and that it was it was plain, and that it didn't bear anything like that. And you almost think that brigands would actually have stolen a shield or two. There would be something to kind of, but theirs was like completely, void of anything that would indicate who they were. And they were riding war horses,
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't riding...
concerning the horses, he said it were war horses they rode. Many a year I worked in old Sir William's stables, so I know the difference. Not a one of these ever pulled a plow. God's bear witness if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I thought, they're well-mounted brigands, right? So
right, and then and something to take in here, and it's way more. You notice it a lot more in the show because it's like so blatantly obvious. Right after this, war-mounted brigands, observed Littlefinger. Perhaps they stole the horses from the last place they raided. And so you do have, and then you had Varys earlier saying, "Oh, dreadful! How cruel can men be?" And you have Pycelle in the show. They like Littlefinger keeps saying, like after every line somebody says, Littlefinger says like, "Who do we know that's that tall?" Right? Who do we know? Like he's clearly, and like you can see Ned Stark is like annoyed by it, but he's clearly just trying to push Ned Stark into doing it.
Right, and
it seems like he like Littlefinger is. In this, it's a little different. It's because there's a lot more text, and then they have one little like smaller line in there, so it kind of is like this shows how great Gur's writing is because it's important, right? That happens. Yeah, that these outside things are influencing it, and they come after like a long bit of text. Right, or like those guys are saying something, and then you get that thing kind of reminding you. It's kind of like when you're, like if you're on the phone with somebody and you're trying to like listen, but there's like something going on in the room you're in, or you're driving. Yeah. And so it's like your attention's being pulled. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Well, and what I was thinking is, I like the idea too, just in my thought process here, that Littlefinger is, trying to. I don't know, like it's weird. It's either really subtle that he's either just ignorant of who this could be, or that he's really trying to he knows. Pretend, yeah, exactly, or to pretend to stop Ned. Yeah, exactly. So it is kind of interesting. It's cool to me that like this is really Eddard's decision, and he's not, his hand is not forced. It's like he even though they're all saying, well, it could be brigands, it could be this, it could be that, he's hearing the words of these folk, and he understands what has happened between his wife and Tyrion and the Lannisters, so he understands what's happening. They all do, really, but it's a game, it's a Game of Thrones here. So, so then he goes on to talk to a few more of them, and they start to describe the big man, right? So Joss and Sir Mark end up kind of talking about how big this guy was. Big as an ox, a voice like a stone was breaking. Those that say the giants are all dead never saw this one, I swear. And then they, Sir Mark yells out, "The mountain! Can any man doubt it? This is, Sir Gregor Clegane's work." And, he's known for being a ruthless, type of guy, but it's just, the stuff they're doing is awful. They're toying with these people. They didn't actually take anything. They didn't take any of their crops or any of their, possessions, so there's that. I mean, there was 100 of them, right? It's like, yeah, that's a lot too. That's a lot. To be how many were there in this raiding party, right? Like, yeah, the Ironborn don't even send 100 people to go raid a village. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So anyways, they said, Pycelle's kind of saying, why should Sir Gregor turn brigand? By the grace of his liege lord, he holds a stout keep and lands of his own. This man is an anointed knight.
This is when Sir Mark calls him a false knight,
Right.
Lord Tywin's mad dog. And so Pycelle, again, is trying. This is where you kind of see Pycelle come out and really show who he's loyal
Right.
to.
Well, right. When they ask too, when they say like, the no banners part, they say like, Lord Eddard told her, "You said they flew no banners. What was the armor they wore? Did you note of any ornaments or decorations on their or devices on their shields or helm? Agrees with me, my lord, but the armor they showed us was plain. Only the one who led them. He was armored right like the rest, but there was no mistaking him in the same. It was the size of him. They say those as say the giants are all dead. Never saw this one. Yeah, big as an ox and a voice like stone breaking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting. Now, two cool things happen here. Sansa walks in, as I said before, and Ned just kind of is like, upset that she's there, but then understands, like, couldn't have expected this to happen today. And then I think it's Baelish kind of directs a question towards Sir Mark, Sir Carl, and Sir Raymond, saying, aren't these holdfast, aren't these places under your protection? Where were you? And they kind of talk about that they were attending his Lord Father in the pass beyond below the Golden Tooth, as was Sir Mark, and word came out from Edmure Tully that they should take a small force of men to find what survivors we could and bring them to the king. So that's what they've done. They've brought these survivors before the king, and
Right.
then it's Sir Raymond Derry who speaks up and says, Sir Edmund had summoned me to River Run with all of my strength. I was camped across the river from his walls, awaiting his command when the word reached me. So he had already summoned Sir William Derry or Raymond Derry, because of all the stuff that was happening, on the borders there. And this is where you get that bit about, Ned kind of sees that, like, okay, Edmure is young, and he's divided his swords. He's spread them out to protect all of those villages along the border, and actually doesn't have a real solid force. He's very gallant, but not very I guess intelligent or battle savvy. Doesn't quite understand, like, if there is an invasion, he's going to be able to easily sweep through your men, because he has a strong force, and he can just pick.
Right.
He can start here and work his way up, because you guys are not united. You've divided your forces too much, and you haven't, because you would want to evacuate some of those villages and move them, to a safe hold, and make it easier to kind of identify, scout when the Lannister forces are moving, if they do move across the border. And so that's a cool little insight that Ned has as he's learning about their plans. So
Right. And I like this line here too, right? So, and if they come again, Sir Littlefinger asks, if they come again, we will use their blood to water the fields they burnt, Sir Mark Piper declared hotly. Sir Edmure has sent men to every village and hold fast within a day's ride of the border, Sir Kyle explained. The next raider will not have such an easy time of it. And that may be precisely what Lord Tywin wants, Ned thought to himself, to bleed off strength from River Run, goad the boy into scattering his swords. His wife's brother was young and more gallant than wise. He would try to hold every inch of his soil to defend every man, woman, and child who named him Lord, and Tywin Lannister was shrewd enough to know that. I love when we get these little, like, just like the strategy and tactics from Ned.
Yeah.
Because Ned is clearly like a great, like, tactician, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't really understand the Game of Thrones, but he understands military, right? Like, I love that line when he tells Kat, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, he's like, send people gives out his orders, like, you go to Moat Cailin, like, you cannot get through it, the whole thing. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. Just to kind of, that's what's neat about some of my pondering. We'll talk about this at the end. Some of my musings, have me thinking about the Dance of Dragons and some of the strategy in battle that's going to take place, and what could be hinted there. So, but yeah, so we move on here and we start to talk about the King's Justice, and it's like Grand Maester Pycelle starts to kind of argue that, hey, if Hoster Tully and these guys have issue with Sir Gregor, then they should take this, to Tywin Lannister, his liege lord, and this shouldn't be something that we trouble the king with. This should be, he basically kind of followed the chain of command. You should have gone to his liege lord first, and then if it's not settled, then you come here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where Ned kind of explains it's all the king's justice, north, south, east, or west, we all do what we do in Robert's name, the king's justice. And, so he's kind of telling him that basically that this is a concern of the throne. Regardless of where it goes, it is a concern. It is the king's justice. And so I thought that was kind of neat, just saying.
Yeah, Ned tells Pycelle off, too, because right after this he says, "The king's justice," Grand Maester Pycelle said, "so it is, and we should defer this matter until the king. The king is hunting across the river and may not return for days," Lord Eddard said. "Robert bid me to sit here in his place, to listen with his ears and speak with his voice. I mean to do just that. Though I agree that he must be told." He saw a familiar face beneath the tapestries. Sir Robar. Sir Robar stepped forward and bowed. "My lord, your father is hunting with the king. Will you bring them word of what has been done here today?" "Not once, my lord."
Yeah.
And then, Sir Ezra, I'll let you do the next part since it's your favorite.
It actually starts with Sir Robar. I mean, like, could you imagine being that guy, though? I mean, just him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, taking this news that, like, oh, shit, this is, like, really, happening. I gotta go tell the king what's about to happen. So that guy's still standing there waiting for Eddard to do, kind of his thing. And, So anyways, he says at once, right? He says he's on his way, and he'll leave at once this is all what has been told here in the court,
right?
And Sir Mark Piper is the one who kind of says, "So do we have your leave then to take our vengeance?" And this is where it comes down. It actually, with two different folks, it comes down to the question of, is this vengeance you're seeking or the king's justice? They're two different things, and so all of these folks are kind of seeking, some of them are seeking the king's justice, and some are wanting vengeance. And so he tries to separate the two. The one that you'll get here in a little bit, too, is you'll get another, someone else who's also really pissed at the mountain, Sir Loras, right?
Yeah.
And he's kind of the one who...
Sir Loras says, I don't fear Sir Gregor.
Well, he should. He should fear.
I beg of you the honor of acting in your place. Give this task to me, my lord, and I swear I shall not fail you. And then Littlefinger chimes in. He's like, "Sir Loras, if we send you alone, Sir Gregor will send us back your head with a plum stuffed in that pretty mouth of yours. The mountain is not the sort of to bend his neck to any man's justice." Yeah. And so this is where we get to it. Sir Loras again is just kind of he's hot and upset, whatever. Ned eased himself slowly back onto the hard iron seat of Aegon's misshapen throne. His eyes searched the faces along the wall, and I love this. Like there are many folks in this chamber, and he says, "Lord Beric," he called out, "Thoros of Myr, Sir Gladden, Lord Lothar? Yeah, Lord Lothar. The men named stepped forward one by one. Each of you is to assemble 20 men and bring my word to Gregor's keep. 20 of my own guard shall go with you," which is something I kind of forgot. 20 of his own guard shall go with you, right? "Lord Beric Dondarrion, you shall have the command, as befits your rank." And I just imagine, like in my mind, I see him just scanning and weighing each of these men. Like, okay, who do we want to pick? And it's very interesting that he picks people from different regions. They represent the Crown lands. Essentially almost Dorne and Stormlands. Yeah, all that. So which is kind of neat. And you've also got the North represented in his guard, his 20. And so the young lord with red gold hair bowed, "As you command, Lord Eddard." And again, it's like Eddard's like big commandment, He raised his voice so it carried to the far end of the throne room. "In the name of Robert of House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, by the word of Eddard of House Stark, his hand, I charge you to ride to the Westlands with all haste, to cross the red fork of the Trident under the king's flag, and there bring the king's justice to the false knight Gregor Clegane. To all those who shared in his crimes, I denounce him, I attaint him, and I strip him of all rank and titles, and all lands and incomes and holdings, and do sentence him to death. May the gods take pity on his soul." I mean,
it's a pretty cool, like, sort of proclamation. It's just it's awesome. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it's really this is their charge. And so later on, we'll get to the battle at the Mummer's Ford. We'll get what happens there.
Well, it's a huge turning point in the books as we know what goes forward. I mean, it's this moment which is what sets up the Brotherhood without banners.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, running into Catelyn Stark or Lady Stoneheart.
Yes.
Back to Lady Stoneheart. I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Gendry getting knighted. All of it is like this kind of moment right here.
Right, and they are carrying out the king's justice. So they are still, as far into, as the series goes on, they are still carrying out that order,
Right.
And it's why I just kind of believe, even if Clegane Bowl happens, it may be that Sandor is that the Hound is under, joins up with. I mean, he does at one point is with the
in the show we see them.
Yeah, kind of joins back up with them. So maybe that's something that happens, and he helps them, kind of finish this off. I don't know. It just kind of a
right. But
but
right here, with the echo of the words died away, the Knight of Flowers seemed perplexed. Lord Eddard, what of me? So here's a question for you, Sir Ezra.
Yeah.
Let's say that he had sent. Let's just play what if here because it's fun. That he had sent Sir Loras instead.
Yeah.
Let's say what happens then is if the Mountain kills him, then House Tyrell is immediately going to war with House Lannister. And then House Lannister would be screwed because the big advantage they get is that they can marry Joffrey to Marjorie.
Yeah.
And kind of secure that thing. If you don't have that, because
that's a good point. I mean, because first of all, I totally believe he would have died, even if he had the same number of men, led them to like the way that they did. Because you find out in that battle that the Mountain is just ruthless, and he also uses tactics that are just they're not honorable, and he surprise attacks and different things, ambushes and what have you.
Right.
So, I think he would have died, and then you actually you're right. You could have had some issue there with the Tyrells, which would have caused a major swing in things. Because that was the thing, is that he was trying to find individuals to lead this party that, one, were honorable men, and two, they didn't have any,
because
their
think
allegiances.
About this too. Then maybe Renly isn't declaring himself king. Maybe Renly is then just going to war against House Lannister.
Right? Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. If he doesn't have the support of House Tyrell, I mean,
because Renly declares himself king, and then has Highgarden and the Tyrells with him.
Yeah.
But if Loras just died, he may take his own troops and say, "Hey, we're going to go get revenge on them." And so then he and Stannis are joined together because he just wants revenge.
Right.
You'd have House Tyrell there too.
Yep.
I mean, the Lannisters would be destroyed because you'd have the Starks as well.
Yeah, it would have been a completely different dynamic. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, and the other thing I don't want to forget to mention is that Loras actually, you remember at the Hand's Tourney, he is seeking vengeance because of how he was treated by the Mountain. Even though he defeats him, on horseback. And that's the other thing. We even going back to the next chapter that we'll be in Fire and Blood, Jaehaerys actually sees wisdom in like picking his Kingsguard from melee combat, not from tilts. And so it's one thing to be on a horse and riding directly at that other person, but to be in a battle and to be fighting. Although you will see later that Loras Tyrell is actually pretty awesome when it comes to.
Oh, he's a boss. Yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to battle and things later on. I mean, he's severely injured and stuff, but still, gets that experience, and I kind of start to feel for him, but. Yeah, so in the other bit here at the end, the last thing that we'll kind of leave you guys with is the whole Sir Ilyn Payne, thing. Mm-hmm. House Payne is kind of, they're of the Westerlands, and, Ilyn Payne, he had his tongue cut out because of the things that he said about the Mad King, and his support for Tywin Lannister. So, he is the King's Justice. I mean, he's the executioner. He's supposed to be, the one hunting down the Mountain here, and he basically, Ned says, no, I mean, he thought about his alliances and thought there might be a conflict of interest there. There shouldn't be, and that was one that he was kind of like, if it is all the king's justice and we're just doing what we're supposed to be doing, he is at the king's, dispense or whatever, but like he's had his tongue cut out for things that he said against the king before. So, he's really trying to pick the best men that he can there and make a good decision.
And then this last line here, just for another total foreshadowing.
Yeah.
He does so love his work, right?
Yeah. Talking about Ill and Pain. Yeah, he does. Yep. And there's total foreshadowing in that, like, hopefully this slight that Eddard has given him will, be something that he can outgrow, but not necessarily. So, all right, though, that's the chapter. I mean, it's short, but I really like it. I always think back to that scene, and it's like one of those things when you think about if you could go visit, like a scene in the book, what are some of the ones that you would pick? And that's one I would want to go back and see. I would want to go back and hear the tension in the room and feel the tension, I should say, and then hear the command, from Eddard Stark to Lord Beric Dondarrion, charging him, with the king's justice. It's just sick. It's awesome. So, okay. I would say we kind of covered a lot of the cool connections. Did you have any other?
No, I'm ready for some ravens.
Yeah, we got a couple small ones here. Ones that I thought would be interesting to bring up. Sir Matt, if you would on.
Right. Yeah, I go in right for you right here.
Okay, yeah.
This is from Instagram from Lady Sydney.
Yeah.
Happy holidays, my lord. So I was recently rewatching some of the show, and I just had a question about a character that only appears once in its entirety. I'm usually one for book theories, but this one is a show theory that bothered me since the first time I watched it. Do you remember the sorcerer that Varys showed Tyrion in season 3? Was there a bigger point to showing him, and is he more important than we think, or is he being there really just to show Varys' dark side, give us a bit of his backstory, and show us his motivation for not supporting Stannis and Melisandre? I definitely don't think this will happen in the books, but the show has a way of coming back to things that seemed like filler scenes to viewers. What do you think?
Wow.
So if you remember, so that is the guy who he is referred to in the books as a certain man, right? Varys says it was a certain man that took my manhood, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A sorcerer, but he doesn't find him in the show. He finds him, and he has him in that box, and he shows it to Tyrion, and then so it's presumed he kills him. So,
right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to see if there's anything in the books about that, though. The only thing I have.
So yeah, I agree. In the show, I think it's a way to show how powerful Varys is, right?
Yeah.
Like he clearly does have a network of spies. He is going to be true to his word about like following up on things. In the show, I think, or in the books, I think there's going to be a lot more to it. He is a sorcerer. Magic is definitely a lot more prevalent in the books. So I think there's definitely some more to it.
Yeah, let me just read here from the histories here in the Free Cities. According to Grandmaster Pycelle, Varys was born a slave in Lys or Lys, whatever you want to say. Varys says that he was apprenticed as an orphan to a troop of mummers who worked the Free Cities and Old Town, especially King's Landing. During their stay in Mere, a certain man offered a large sum of money for Varys, an offer his master found too tempting to refuse. So, just singling out Varys. The man gave Varys a potion that made him powerless to move or speak, but did nothing to dull his senses, as his manhood was cut off at the stem. Then burnt in a brazier in a blood magic ritual. The man had no further use for Varys and tossed him out on the streets alone to die. Varys, out of spite for the sorcerer, vowed to live. Varys claimed to have held a hatred for all things magical ever since. He resorted to begging, prostitution, thievery, eventually becoming the best thief in Mere until a rival forced him out and he fled to Pentos. So yeah, there's just a little tidbit on his background, but yeah, as was said, it's not something that has come up, I don't think, in the book series, has it? I don't think, like, his actual finding of that individual, So that's a question. Is that actually going to happen? Is that something that's actually going to happen in the books? If it's not already, I'm doing a quick little search, and I don't really remember anything about that. I remember there was talk as to how he came to where he's at now, but yeah, that's a cool little thought. I think it does in the show, as Sir Matt said, that it does show sort of his prowess, his power, his ability to kind of track that individual down and to kill him, and even though he has this resentment towards things that are magical in nature and stuff, I think he finds ways to, either exploit those magical beings or to, he uses again his own skills as a mummer and as a beggar and a thief. So yeah. That's a good one. That's cool. I mean, I hadn't thought about that individual for a long time. So
yeah. Who is that sorcerer? I don't know if it could it taught. Go ahead.
Well, is there a connection to R'hllor? With that individual, because that's what it is in the show, right? There's a connection to. There's a burning, right? It's a sacrifice to. It's a blood ritual done in the fires. It's tossed into the fire, and so
yeah. So here I found this. Somebody kind of breaks down, and we've talked about Varys theories before. Is he a Targaryen?
Sure.
I found this big kind of post on Reddit about it, and somebody says a theory on Varys' parentage. This guy says, I speculate that Varys is the grandson of Aerion Brightflame Targaryen. This started when I saw that Varys said he'd been born in Lys. Assuming this is true, this is my proposed timeline with dates taken from the A Song of Ice and Fire wiki.
Okay, yeah.
So remember, Aerion Brightflame was Aegon V's brother who got exiled, right, after, Dunk kicked the crap out of him. Sir Duncan the Tall. Kicked his teeth in, quite literally.
Right.
In 208, Aerion Targaryen is exiled to Lys, where he fathered at least one child. Then we know in 232 he drinks wildfire and dies. In 233, King Maekor I dies. A great council is called to determine succession. The two oldest sons, including Aerion, were already dead. The Great Council noted that Aerion left behind an infant son, but they passed on the idea of offering it to the crown to this foreign-born bastard infant. Instead, they offered the crown to Maester Aemon, who famously refused it, and the crown went to King Aegon V, or Egg. In 243, the Mad King is born. In 248, Aerion's bastard son would have been 16 years old. This seems to be around the normal age that you could father your first child. In Westeros or Essos, I propose he fathered at least Varys. In 259, Rhaegar is born. In 276, King Aerys summons Varys to the court to become his spy master. If he was born in the range between Aerys and Rhaegar, Varys would be at least in his mid-20s. And then you jump ahead today to 300. The events of the Dance of Dragons would put Varys at least in his early 50s.
Huh. Okay. Wow.
Then it says, Varys says that he was born a slave in Lys. He shaves his head, perhaps to hide his distinctive hair color, which we know other people do.
Yeah.
There are stories of his great uncle Aegon, if it were his uncle, Egg the Fifth, doing the same. Also, Aerion once physically threatened to castrate his brother Aegon. It would be ironic if Aerion's grandson suffered this same fate. On a side note, Varys' castration is a blood magic ritual similar to what Melisandre has been trying to do with King's blood. That might also hint at his royal lineage. Perhaps it wasn't for magic at all. Perhaps castration was simply to put an end to yet another splinter Targaryen dynasty.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot to take in. I mean, that's. I hope there's something like that though with Varys. Something really a cool, twist or connection. Even if it's not true Targaryen, if it's, Blackfire, what have you, something.
Right. Like, why are they trying to push Egg? The whole thing.
Yeah. That would be really kind of neat to see.
Or Aegon, the young Griff.
Yeah, young Griff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So. Okay, well, that's cool. Thank you for that. I've just mine are real quick. I got a couple from Lord Hunter here, the foul mouth, just sort of saying Merry Christmas. He enjoyed the Lost in Shield episode. Super pumped about all the new show stuff. And then he said, "You had me at Lightbringer is a person," a couple weeks ago when we talked about that. Chris Ridley actually sent us something here that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to put this to Sir Matt. So he just listened to the Night of the Laughing Tree podcast. This is one of my favorite characters, so I've done a lot of research on this. Have you ever read the physical description of Benjen Stark in Westeros.org? The description of his eyes are quite telling. So let's take a look at that real quick, Sir Matt.
Mhm.
I did the other day.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
It's awesome. It's really, really great. I'm going to read it for everybody so they can just get this initial bit here. His appearance. Okay. So if you go down to appearance under Benjen Stark, it says, Benjen has sharp features and blue eyes in which a hint of laughter is often present. So that's all you need to read right there. In which a hint of laughter is often present. And so I thought that was kind of the description of his eyes. He's got these sharp features, blue eyes, with a hint of laughter present. Why do you need to add that little bit in there? Is that just somebody from Westeros.org adding that in? The description comes from Game of Thrones Chapter 5, John 1. And that may actually be, I'd have to go look exactly. Game of Thrones Chapter 5. Got the book right here. I'll see if we can find it. But anyways, what do you think about that, Sir Matt? Pretty interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
that's one of the candidates that we had listed, right?
That's the description of his eyes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because that was one of the people we had said could have been the Night of the Laughing Tree, and I just thought that was kind of cool that they would mention that. I was trying to find it real quick in the book here, but you guys can look that up though. It's Chapter 5 here when Uncle Benjen shows up, and at Winterfell it looks like they do describe him as having a hint of laughter in his eyes, which is crazy, right? That's kind of a crazy little layer underneath that would suggest that maybe he was, the Night of the Laughing Tree. So cool. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that though. So, all right, Sir Matt, anything else?
I'm just reading more about this Varys theory here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Sir Matt is in a rabbit hole right now.
Well, because if you remember,
yeah,
his castration is kind of a big deal.
Okay.
Because remember in, like season 6 when Varys and Tyrion are over at the Red Priest, they run into that other Red Priestess, Kinvara.
Yeah.
And Varys kind of makes a joke, and then she tells him of the story that happened to him.
Yeah.
And if you remember, when his member was thrown into the fire, a voice called out to him.
Yeah.
And so I think it is going to come back, right? We're gonna hear about who spoke to him in the flames. Was it R'hllor? Right? Was it? And so and what are we going to get out of Varys in this upcoming season? And there's the whole Varys Melisandre kind of thing where Melisandre tells him off.
Right.
Kind of a thing. Like she kind of, doesn't she whisper something to him and he kind of looks like scared?
Yeah, she does. And that's a thread they have to finish up though, right? I mean, they have to.
Right. I think there's definitely going to be something more to it. And whether that comes full circle back to the books, will remain to be seen, but
yeah. But I'm with you. I think that is something that's going to have to come, because it was a bigger deal though in the show, I feel like, and that's where I was kind of struggling to find some stuff in the books that would help me understand a bit more. So,
because does a voice call out to him in the books, or do we just know that the guy? I don't think there is.
No, I don't think that part was. I'd have to go look up the actual description, but at least according to the wiki, that wasn't something that was said in the books. It was. It just talks about how he was bought, paid for, and he did feel the pain of it, was left to die, and
no, they do. No, they do. Yeah, it is mentioned. Yeah.
What, that his voice?
Yes, the man had no further use of Varys and tossed him out in the streets to die alone. Varys, out of spite for the sorcerer, vowed to live.
Yeah. But as for like what he heard in the flames, I don't know if he was. I don't know. I don't know if he was. I'm sure he was there for that ritual, and maybe something did happen. We just haven't gotten it yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I'm assuming. But I'll have to go dig. So. All right.
Okay.
Yep, I think that does it. We're saving some of you have sent us ravens. We are definitely so January I think we said 16th there. Let me double check. Wait, 13th. Sorry, I keep saying the 16th. January 13th. That'll be a Sunday. We're going to do that first Raven's Nest, and we have saved a bunch of good ravens. I think next week we'll post a couple of the topics. We won't maybe share the whole raven, but we will, kind of give you the gist of what is said there, so you guys can kind of ponder on it and think about it before we hop into the discussion there. Now, again, on Patreon, you can, if you're at the top tier, you can participate in that. We're going to have you guys on, and you can kind of talk with us. So if you're there and we see you in the Discord chat, we're just going to click on you. We'll probably, before we start, click on everybody and just have everybody kind of chat with us and make sure we're good to go. And the other thing we'll do is, if you're in, I think it's the $15 or $10 tier, you're actually able to type in like influence as well, just through your just through the chat. So I'll be watching the feed, and if we have more questions there, we can kind of get those circulated in as well. So it's kind of cool. It's like a live way to kind of influence the discussion and talk about it. We'll release it on the actual main feed and podcast. So get ready for that.
Absolutely. So, all right, Sir Ezra, well, I believe it is time to sign off.
Yes, unfortunately.
We want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Chapter 44, Sansa 3.
Yeah. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We'll see you in a week, and remember that winter is coming.